who don't know, the Free State Project is a movement of voluntary human action where we are trying to concentrate libertarians in the state of New Hampshire.
I think we've done more in the last decade than every other libertarian movement combined has accomplished in the last 5 decades.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, libertarians, anarchists, movers, natives, and those on your way, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Free State Live, where you get to hear about all the different ways you can live free and thrive in the free state of New Hampshire. First and foremost, like every week, it's time to welcome everyone back. I'm Justin O'Donnell, former Libertarian candidate for U.S. Senate and author of Live Free and Thrive, 101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, and so should you. And joining me, we got, as always, Manchester's favorite funny man, Tall Bill. How are you, Tall?
Doing good. Excited for another episode. It's going to be a good guest tonight.
As always. And everyone's favorite keyboard activist extraordinaire, Kevin from the internet.
Hey, what's happening?
I don't know what's going on the internet today.
Oh, it's been too busy of a day on the internet. My phone battery actually hit like 15%, and I was like, all right, too much internet. I need to calm down.
There's always too much internet, and it's good.
Too much going on today.
Something to talk about that's not on the internet, about doing things in real life. The running for office is nothing new for people here in New Hampshire. People run constantly. We have the most representative legislature in the world, and the Free State Project is itself a movement that ties people together based on their political views. People want to get involved. And joining us tonight, we have a first-time candidate who, in 20 years of being a political science professor and the founder of the Free State Project, Jason Sorens, running for office for the first time. How's it going, Jason?
It's going great. Thanks for having me.
So why did it take you so long to run for office? I mean,
I'm not I'm not a natural politician. I am I'm a writer, a teacher. That's what I've been doing. Been working on the ideas end, promoting ways that we can get to a freer society, and really this opportunity came up. It kind of found me. A lot of my research in the last 5 years has been on land use and housing, and this is one of the few areas where New Hampshire is less free than the average state, because we've had. We're very decentralized, and we allow towns to regulate land use. And as a result, over time, they've become, a lot of them, not all of them, have become pretty restrictive. And I live in a town called Amherst. It's one of the wealthiest towns in the states, one of the best educated towns in the state. And increasingly, there's a movement, a NIMBY movement to keep everybody out and to block all development. And I thought this is crazy. We're taking away rights from our neighbors. They want to make it impossible for someone I know, a family I know in town, to subdivide their 10-acre lot. And so I started going to planning board meetings, started meeting people in town. They encouraged me to run. Not necessarily libertarians. A few of them are sort of moderate libertarian, but most of them are not. They were also worried about this. And I thought, I've got the expertise. This is the moment. The time is right.
So, I mean, land use and zoning is, I think, are really under talked about. People gloss over it too much and don't realize how much of an impact it has on just everything. Like not just housing construction, but like every economic factor, top to down, comes back to land use and zoning at some point. In one of the big criticisms that New Hampshire does have, even from those of us who like to look at everything with rose-colored glasses about how much we love this state, is its homelessness issue and the lack of affordable housing. And we have small towns, rural villages that are directly abutting our 3 major cities that have some of the most restrictive zoning in the state and prohibit building any kind of new development to house the workforce of the state. To me, that's a critical thing, and I'm excited to see somebody finally going after it. I know you've been hosting talks and debates on it the last few years, but finally doing something about it. I can't run for zoning board here in Manchester myself because it's not elected in the cities. But what kind of proposals do you propose? What are you running on doing to open up this access for people.
Yeah. So my platform is very moderate and reasonable, and I've built a kind of broad coalition around it. This is not sort of based YIMBY. This is this is moderate suburban YIMBY. This is saying, hey, there are these people on the planning board who are endorsing these warrant articles, which is what we call them in New Hampshire. When you get to vote, the whole town gets to vote, right? The planning board can't do this by itself. The whole town gets to vote on a zoning amendment, and these amendments would drastically restrict development. And the town is already growing very slowly. Our school population has dropped 12% since 2010. We grew by 500 residents a decade over the whole 21st century so far. So we're a town that is barely growing. Our school population is falling. These old tropes that, oh, if you build housing, it's going to drive up taxes because you're letting in school kids. These things are based in what was happening in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Long since has this changed, and we're seeing that New Hampshire now has the second lowest fertility rate in the country. Makes sense. It's hard for couples to settle down and have a family if they can't find good housing, if they can't buy their own home. And so what I'm proposing is, let's do a little bit of sort of win-win development in town. We are going to make our what's called Planned Residential Development Ordinance work, or PRD, which is a bureaucratic term for something that's actually kind of flexible and cool, which is saying that, hey, we've got minimum lot sizes ranging from 2 to 5 acres. So it is illegal to build a house on less than 2 acres anywhere in town, and in some districts on anything less than 5 acres. Of course, those houses on that kind of land are not going to be in any way affordable. Well, what about we allow you as a developer to build on an acre or an acre and a half, and in exchange, you put away some of that backland into a conservation easement. All right, so this is not some radical libertarian, open up the floodgates solution. This is just adding a little more flexibility that mollifies the people in town who want to preserve rural character, but at the same time, you are allowing a greater variety of housing than we currently have. So that's one of the things I want to do. I also want to grow our commercial and industrial tax base. I want to use performance zoning and maybe some incentives for building in sewer. So maybe we can get private financing for wastewater treatment in our commercial and industrial areas. If we then say to them, hey, we're going to relax all these dimensional regulations, which are things like minimum lot sizes. We're going to say, if you provide some financing for sewer, we're going to take those regulations away, and you can do whatever you want, so long as you mitigate groundwater pollution and air pollution and traffic and noise and things like that. So long as you don't make this a problem for the rest of town, you can do what you want in this district. Just bring in that sewer, and that'll raise our tax base, right? Raise that assessed value. And in New Hampshire, that's what drives your local tax rate. If you're spending a certain amount, growing that tax base means you can tax at a lower rate to raise that money. So that's going to help everyone who owns residential property in town. So these are just very sensible, pragmatic solutions to choking ourselves to death.
Yeah, wouldn't building more property increase the number of taxpayers as well to ease that burden on the individuals? Like, I never get the argument, you can't build more housing, you're bringing more students in to raise the cost. Well, we're also bringing in the students' families to buy the new housing. Like, they're going to be paying the taxes on that, and it'll be at a more expensive rate than the undeveloped land that's in current use right now. So that argument to me never made sense.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Residential development is often also a net positive for the taxpayer because, current use, you're getting no taxes out of that virtually. And so what you can do is then these people are paying taxes. If you have them, with something like a PRD, those homes are closer to the road. You're not building out new utilities, new roads. You don't have to maintain them. It's actually a win for the taxpayer, but getting people to understand that is that next step. Some of them get it, Others are still stuck in the mentality of the past. No, I want a rural, quaint town, and I think I can keep things from changing if I just keep anyone from developing, and that's a big fallacy.
Yeah.
Do you think that if you have success here in, I don't remember which town you said you're in, it'll be a good blueprint for other towns to adopt across New Hampshire? And that's likely to happen?
Yeah, I think this is a really important fight because in Amherst, there's been a turn, and it's been widely reported on, and Amherst is getting a reputation for being a NIMBY anti-business town, and it's where the fight has been, so to speak. And there were people in town spreading rumors about how the previous planning board was corrupt, and they threw them out and turned to an elected planning board and tightened up the regulations. And so there was a real sort of bad precedent of kind of fear mongering about, modest developments. And so it would be a real story if we can turn this around in Amherst. We can do it anywhere. We can do it in Portsmouth and Hanover and in the wealthy places around the state that have tried to close the gates to everyone else. We can open them up a little crack.
It's funny for me to hear Amherst being business unfriendly because, to be perfectly honest, the only thing I know of Amherst is that it has the best barbecue place in the state of New Hampshire. At Smokehouse. Now, well, all three of us here, we live in Manchester. It's a very, very different thing in cities than these small rural towns. Much of the zoning issues we have in the cities have just made development in the city impossible over time, where it wasn't in the past, and it's just gotten piled on to the point where you can't do anything anymore at all. In my neighborhood, there's a decrepit building across the street from me that's been vacant for 4 years with a for sale sign because it's unoccupiable. Nobody could live in there. It would cost a couple $100,000 to renovate the building. It would be cheaper to knock it down and just build a new building there, but the lot size isn't big enough to build a building on, and it wouldn't meet the off-street parking requirements in the current zoning laws. So it's just sitting there vacant and unused and uninhabitable because of the zoning laws. Is there anything like that, like holding back the small towns? Has it gotten that bad yet in Amherst, or is this a uniquely city problem?
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated because you look at Manchester and Nashua, and actually in a lot of respects, their zoning is a little more permissive than your Bedford, your Nashua, your Hollis, places like that, your Amherst and Hollis. Your lot sizes are a little bit smaller in those residential districts. So yeah, there's actually a rural part of Manchester in the Northwest that people don't know about around where the Manchester Cedar Swamp is. And
Cedar Swamp reserves.
Yeah, it's awesome. But there's
a whole abandoned neighborhood there too. It was not neighborhood. They were going to build like a
college
school
campus
or something. Yeah, it's like so you can go out there and there's people hanging out sometimes that are usually fun people.
That's cool.
It sounds rural.
The problem with the cities is that if you don't constantly change your ordinance, you end up building out what you've already permitted, and then nothing is left there for you to build on. And so, I'm going to actually give this maybe not popular opinion, but I'm going to give Mayor Joyce Craig a little bit of credit here. This is not an endorsement for her next campaign or anything, but I am going to say that on housing, I think she gets it. And there's going to be a new draft zoning ordinance for Manchester, and I think it might even drastically scale back parking minimums or even get rid of them altogether, which would be fantastic. Parking minimums are the most idiotic idea especially in an urban zoning ordinance, where you're taking away revenue from yourself because you can charge people for on-street parking. You are creating ugly surface parking lots that bring in no tax revenue. You're subsidizing the automobile. I thought, we cared about the environment and things like that. It's just a lose.
Disincentivizing business all around.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely what you're doing. So, I'll say that Manchester, Nashua, and Concord too, they have a new zoning ordinance. It's a little bit better than what they had before. They're actually moving in the right direction. we'll set Portsmouth aside. I think maybe they'll come around someday. And of course, a commenter said up in Pittsburgh, there's virtually no zoning. In fact, there is no zoning. There's no subdivision regulation. There's
It's
Pittsburgh is
also
one
only
of
like
two.
2 roads.
Yeah, that's right. 850 people live there. It's one of 2 towns in New Hampshire where there's no planning board. So really, you can just do what you want on your land. So if you want that, there are places that offer you that.
That's awesome.
Work remotely.
Yeah, and as he says, people act responsibly when it's in their best interest to do so. I mean, we all know the tragedy of the commons, and I mean, that's always the argument that comes back to with zoning laws is the tragedy of the commons. It's like if we don't manage it, people will ruin it. It's like, well, if they have an interest in maintaining it, maintaining the profitability of it, they won't ruin it.
Yeah, well, that's right, and so you got to align the incentives. I'm not everyone's idea of the most based free stater. I'm a minarchist. I think there's a role for regulating externalities. I mean, actually,
I'm the no zoning laws at all guy. Jason's the reasonable guy.
Listen, we got to give Jason credit though. Jason dreamed this whole thing up. It's like you might not be the most base free stater, but none of us would be free staters if there wasn't a Jason. So,
there you go.
And
that's precisely the problem that people have with me in town. Some of them.
Fair, but actually, so I have a question for you, kind of along the lines of that, right? You dreamed this up. What was it? 20 years ago? 22 years ago?
22 years ago.
How old are you, Jason?
I'm 46 now, so I was 24 then.
So it's been 22 years. It's basically been like a lifetime before and a lifetime after you've had it. And like the Free State Project has evolved. It's its own thing. You can't control it. People are attracted.
Yeah.
It's not without its controversial characters. How do you feel about the people that have been brought to New Hampshire? Like how do you feel about the trajectory of it? Because I imagine there's a whole contentious thing where you're like, well, listen, I just want libertarians to have a place, and be like, yeah, but that guy's here, or something like that.
This is the thing. This is what I said in my Porcupine Day remarks. Like I'm fine to be criticized if that's if you don't like what I'm doing with zoning, criticize me in a respectful way, and I can do the same. Like there's some people who say things I disagree with, and I'll say that in a respectful, kind, gentle way. That's my personality, and that's fine. This is an extremely diverse movement, and that's what I want people to realize. We're all working for liberty in our own ways, and I am proud of the accomplishments that Free Staters have made, and I've said that on my campaign page. If it weren't for Free Staters, we would not have reformed civil asset forfeiture in New Hampshire, most likely. Right? There was a Free Stater who wrote that bill. Previously police could seize your property and you had to prove your innocence to get it back, and we've changed that. We legalized nanobreweries. And there's a cool new one in Milford. Check it out. So,
I was at one.
Beer scene in New Hampshire is underrated, by the way.
What's that?
Beer scene in New Hampshire is underrated, by the way. If you like beer, New Hampshire is a great place to be. Just throwing it out there. We haven't talked about that ever on this show, but it's so true.
And
that's thanks to Free Staters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's a good question for you then, Jason, from Mark Warden, everyone's favorite realtor here in Manchester. Is it true that all zoning is local and the only state rules are regarding septic and wetlands?
That is almost true. The state also issues terrain modification permits. So if you need to do that as part of a development, you get a state permit. And the state also forbids localities from doing certain things with zoning. So every town has to allow what are called accessory dwelling units, or like in-law apartments.
That's new too, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a state requirement. If it's in a single family zone, you have to allow it. And so that's something few other states have done, and it's really a kind of a cool way to get a lot of new rental stock without angering the neighbors, because these things look like single family developments. Also, there's some complicated rules about workforce housing. Towns have to allow reasonable and realistic opportunities for what's called workforce housing. There's a whole genre of legal theorizing about what that actually means. I'm not sure it's terribly effective, but that's out there. So there's some things that localities simply cannot do, and that the courts will strike down. So regulatory takings are an issue, and courts will say if you're just taking away most of the value of your neighbor's property through a regulation, you may have to compensate them.
Yeah. So we do have Liberty Forum coming up. You spoke at Porcupine Day a couple weeks ago, and you're one of our key speakers for Liberty Forum this year as well. And it's been a while since I've seen you at a Liberty Forum, so I'm excited for that. Is there anything special you're planning to bring up there, or kind of mostly what we've talked about tonight, or like what are you honing in on for Liberty Forum? Why should people come? Don't give it all away. Let's just give people a tease and get them excited.
Yeah, it's about this stuff. And I'm looking up the title I sent in because I thought I was kind of pleased eventually with the title that I came up with. Here it is: Zoned Out: How Restoring Property Rights Will Give Us Abundant Housing and Defeat Socialism.
That's I read that. That's what drove me to do some actual research into zoning stuff beyond what I really don't know, which is I don't know anything about zoning stuff. But that title, reading that at Liberty Forum coming up, I was like, all right, this actually sounds interesting. I'm curious to hear how you're going to defeat socialism with zoning laws.
Yeah,
so it's very good topic there. It's interesting.
I'm gonna maybe I should give a slight teaser for this, but the idea is that there can be lots of beneficial knock-on effects from getting our zoning laws to be more reasonable, and some places not getting rid of them entirely in some of the more rural areas. That's gonna really not only is it going to make housing more abundant and affordable, but it's going to have good political effects for liberty in the long term. And so that's all I'll say right now. You have to come to Liberty Forum to understand why that is. And I'm going to, me, my Liberty Forum talks, it's always data and graphs and things. It's substantive, it's meaty. So you're going to be able to sink your teeth into this.
Well, you can all go get your Liberty Forum tickets today at nhlibertyforum.com, and you can use the code YIMBY to get a discount if you go get that ticket. So yes, in my backyard. Come see Jason and all the other speakers at Liberty Forum. Next 2 weeks from now, right, Bill?
Less. Well, yeah. So 2 weeks from yesterday will be the last day of Liberty Forum.
So it's coming up real quick. So if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, nhlibertyforum.com and use that code YIMBY to go get yourself a discount. I'm looking forward to it. But no. So what's it been like running for office for the first time? What's has it met your expectations as a political science professor, as a free stater, as the leader of founder of a political movement? What's been the experience like as a first-time candidate so far for you?
Yeah, great question. I'm still kind of working through that in my own mind. I never wanted to run unless I was all in, to win. And I didn't want to be a paper candidate. And in this case, I think what worked is that there was a broad coalition of people who urged me to run. I was actually urging other people to run in this coalition. And one by one, there were reasons they couldn't do it. And so finally it was on me. And I was like, well, the one thing I will say, the one advantage to me is I'm used to the heat. I know they're gonna come at me, the extremists, they're gonna come at me, they're gonna, say all sorts of crazy lies. And they have. And I'm used to it. I've been dealing with this for decades. And so I'm not gonna be intimidated by that. I'm not gonna back down. I'm just gonna keep doing it. But I've been working hard, and I'm sinking a good bit of my own money into this for signs, mailers. I'm knocking on doors. I'm talking to voters. I'm getting their support. There's a lot of support for me out there. It's been very gratifying to talk to voters, listen to their concerns, talk about what I'm interested in. Sometimes they have misconceptions about zoning. I mean, zoning is extremely complex, but I've actually been pretty enthused by the attention to detail that some of these voters have. New Hampshire voters, they're informed, and I run into these guys. Oh, I served on the zoning board for 10 years. What do you think about, aquifer protection ordinances.
Well, and it's great because we see a lot of people who move for the Free State Project or just kind of spring up when the Liberty movement here who want to get involved and they get excited about running for office and taking that step. And for most people, when you ask them, what are you going to run for? State rep. It's always state rep, state rep, state rep. That's the first thing that comes to everybody's mind. And I don't think we have enough people who get involved locally at the level you're talking about. And that's where like most of the real decisions that impact people's daily lives are made is at that local level, and it's really important. And Mark even asks, is it true that it's a nonpartisan race and you're independent, so you don't even have party baggage running in these local races?
Yeah, no, that's a great one. Local races are nonpartisan, and so you don't have a primary, and you don't have to label yourself ideologically, which is really good for me as someone who really has trouble putting myself into one of the political parties. Just being able to be myself and being independent there worked really well. These boards don't have many members on them. So if you think about running for state rep, you're 1 out of 400 if you win. And when it's as closely divided as it is right now, that can be decisive. A lot. But that's not the normal situation. And, when you're talking about a board of 5 or 7, your voice means a lot, especially if you're going to be a constructive participant. If I get on there, I'm going to be the hardest working member on that board. I'm going to review the applications. I'm going to come in with questions. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to follow the law. One of the problems in our town is that the planning board has made a couple of mistakes. It's cost us $60,000 in legal fees. We've lost 2 state Supreme Court decisions in the last year. And our state Supreme Court makes like 40 decisions a year. And 2 of them are the Amherst Planning Board did something illegal.
And then the Amherst taxpayers have to pay for that.
That's exactly right. And
so that's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's what I'm taking on the doorstep, and telling them, number one, let's be fair, objective, and consistent in our interpretation of the law. And I do think that is a liberty issue, actually, because if the law is arbitrary or inconsistent, that's interfering with people's plans. They cannot plan for the future. They cannot figure out how to get within the law because they could always end up being wrong. So you got to be consistent and maintain a particular understanding of the law. And of course, there's some laws that are unjust and we should change, but all else equal, maintain a consistent understanding of that law.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how you do and how things shape up for you. To me, it's super exciting to see somebody finally running for local office, and zoning laws have been one of my biggest pet peeves and arguments with people for the last 6 years that I've been here. To the point, when I lived in Nashua, myself and AJ Olding made a habit of going to the Nashua Young Democrats meetings just to argue with them because all they would talk about was the homelessness crisis. And it got to a point we realized there might be a chance when one of the Nashua Young Democrats said, "Why don't we just abolish zoning laws?" And then immediately realized what he said and backtracked it. But like, they really are a big issue. But I do want to remind everyone who's watching and everyone who will watch that the Free State Project is a 501c3 charitable nonprofit organization. Everything we discuss here is just for educational purposes. We do not endorse or support candidates or causes specifically. The views of the individual hosts and our guests may lean towards that direction, but it does not represent the views of the organization officially. However, there are people asking in the comments, Jason, so where can they learn more about your campaign and more about what you're doing and maybe how to help?
Yeah. So my website is sorens4.us. That's Sorens, the number 4.us. And it's definitely the most detailed planning board campaign website you've ever seen. So I've got a positive vision for our town, and I'm putting it out there for the voters. So it's a real test. If they like it, I'll be in. If not, that's fine too. I'll still be engaged.
Awesome. Well, again, it's going to be super fun. Good luck with it. And I'm looking forward to the great and amazing positive changes you can bring to Amherst. And hopefully we can start bringing to everywhere else in the state suffering these same issues. And thanks for coming on and telling us about them. And thank you everyone else for tuning in and joining us tonight. And just remember, if you want to learn more about the Free State Project, you can always go to fsp.org, learn more about the organization and the mission. If you're not here yet and you're kind of on the edge, the best thing to do is to make a visit. So go to Visit NH, plan your visit, get in touch with Chris and Rebecca, and they'll help you get here to meet your future neighbors, meet your future friends, and get integrated into the community that'll make you never want to leave again. And like I said, we do have Liberty Forum right around the corner. So not that one. That'll help you move. But New Hampshire LibertyForum.com, using that code YIMBY, yes, in my backyard, to come hear Jason's presentation about how reforming zoning laws can save us from socialism.
Also, don't forget, if you're here in New Hampshire, we got the Republican Party versus Libertarian Party hockey game coming up this weekend, which should be a fun time if you're, if you're around.
Super
in
fun
Manchester.
time.
I don't know what the link is for that, but if you look up LPNH versus NHGOP, you'll find that. Just Google it.
Oh, yeah. I'll be there this Saturday.
I'll also be there.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And Kevin?
Jason, we'll have to have you back on again. I have a ton of questions about like your ideas with this whole thing. Like I said before the show even started, just fascinated with the entire concept behind it and developing the thesis and the whole letter. So we'll have to try to get you back in at some point. Hop in the Discord, because you'll find me in there. So
all right.
That's about it.
Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks for joining us tonight. And again, thank you so much for coming on, Jason. Until next time, everybody, though, be free.
Yeah. I don't believe in destiny, I just do what's best for me. Don't listen to my enemies, they're just full of jealousy. Yeah, this legacy, you gon' see what's left of me. You gon' see success in me, you ain't seen the rest of me. I just wanna be the best at what I know, better than the rest, just watch me grow. Put me to the test and watch me go. This is my quest, I'ma make it known. They call me obsessive, oh I know. Call me selective with my notes, call me aggressive with my flow. Call me offensive even though Joey ain't gonna lie.